Hello everyone and welcome to Dungeons, well, I guess this is not Dungeons & Dragons.
I mean, same thing.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Welcome to the first episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, HotM, or it's Head of the Machine.
Head of the Machine.
Yeah.
JJBA, HotM.
Yeah. JoJo no Kimyo, Head of the Machine.
Yeah.
There you go. So, so this is a short fanfic that my friend and I wrote, or rather, I actually, it's not that short.
Yeah,
it's getting longer.
It's kind of like becoming its own.
Yeah.
It's actually
It's
its
like
own thing.
longer than a short story, shorter than a novel. I'm nearly done with it.
I helped at some points.
Yeah, Nathan did a lot actually in the early chapters.
Yeah.
We started off writing together, and then he went away to college for a bit. And we did a little bit back and forth, where he would take like the beginning of a chapter, and I would clinch up the end of it. Because from what I've seen, Nathan's better than me at like the short-term interactions and stuff. You're better at making characters feel more like they have more depth.
But you've definitely got like the whole story.
I kind of had
long-term story.
like a whole idea planned out already.
Yeah.
So I've taken that a lot. And in the later chapters, you'll probably see a change in writing style because it shifted to just being me doing it. But yeah, so I have Nathan with me here today.
Yes.
This is a collaborative project between the two of us. This video is going to be a little bit different from most of our other ones, and by a little bit I mean completely. It's a lot more informal, and also it's, as you can tell, not related to D&D.
Yeah.
So that is another thing that sets it apart.
A lot of things that gonna set this off. Main point being that it is in the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure world itself, and some things about that world are Force ghosts are a thing, and all of the main characters have one in one form or another. Sometimes they're just abilities, other times it's a punch ghost.
Yeah, there really are no rules to the stands.
I mean,
like,
and even those rules don't really...
There are rules, but there's like always an exception to the rule. And then like there's an exception to the exception. Like it goes really bizarre. That's the reason for the name of the show, I would assume.
Yeah, like already the canon that there is in the anime, there are 5 seasons, and there are 8, like, I guess you can call them chapters.
In the manga?
In the manga.
Yeah.
Where at one point they go into a completely alternate universe where everyone rides horses and they have horseman. It's...
That I did not know about yet. I'm more familiar with the anime.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're just gonna chat about this a little bit ahead of time, give you a little bit of a feel for what our goals here are, what our intentions and the way we wrote this are, and then at the end of this video, we're doing the intro chapter. It's not really a full chapter.
It's just a taste to get a feel for, you know, who's the hero. And
it's a good way to introduce the main characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna get to that at the end, but it's a lot shorter. In later episodes of this, we won't have like a podcast style introduction. We'll just record the audio.
All right, sounds good.
But this one's shorter, and I didn't want to cover like a chapter and a half in this.
Yeah.
So I think the full story actually of how we got this idea started is Nathan.
Yeah.
Brought up to me like, oh, like if you had a JoJo stand, what would it be, you know? And so
this got us thinking, you know, like what would we do? And it just kept rolling and rolling until it became this.
Nathan had his already pretty well thought up, and it's a pretty unique idea. That he became the character John, who you see. I will be drawing as you hear this. And I sort of I came up with a really like I started with an idea, right? Because I wanted to do something with like an Assassin's Creed style hidden blade, but larger. And then like it evolved into well, that's not really enough on its own.
Yeah.
What other thing can I give it? And I was trying to think like maybe there's like that's like a part of it, but then there's also another stand. And it went through a lot of iterations in my mind of how I wanted this character to be until I settled on something that was just way too complicated to be just like a stand idea to the point where I had to pretty much write a backstory for this character. And then that's so then I kind of went to Nathan and was like, hey, we should like write a fanfic of this. because we've got some pretty neat ideas.
And Viola is here.
Yep. So that's how this got started.
So yeah, the idea is that, you know, every chapter of JoJo has its own JoJo, like Josuke, Jotaro, Jonathan, Giorno. And so coming up with like a story for a character who's, you know, new, like fits in the world, wasn't easy without taking a couple of liberties, shall we say.
Yeah. I mean, like we said earlier, JoJo has some rules, and they like to break those rules, and they like to do really weird stuff with it. So we tried to write it not like a traditional fanfic where you take the characters that you like and put them in a new story. But we tried to write it as if it were its own season of the show, where we have a new main cast, and we just use like the rules of the show and try to like mess around and use the same kind of tone. I think I might have gone a little darker in the later parts, actually.
That's perfectly fine, because, like, you look at some of the shit, like, Stardust Crusaders.
Oh, it's my favorite season.
Second half of Stardust Crusaders, that gets, like, pretty insane when, spoiler alert, people keep dying.
Yeah.
Like,
and as of late in the most recent season, I'm going to leave that to your imagination.
Yeah, really. So, yeah, the idea behind the idea of John, because it was just like a thing that kept rolling.
Yeah.
Was that, stands have, like, they reflect who you are, who each stand user is. It's like their soul, their true self sort of thing. To quote Persona, I am thou, thou art I. So
did Persona rip off JoJo, or did JoJo...
I think Shin Megami Tensei came first, but, like... No, it couldn't have. I honestly have no idea.
Yeah.
Because
they just have very similar concepts.
They do?
Really. I don't know about you, but my favorite season was always Stardust Crusaders.
Yep. Villain of the week. Always good.
I loved when you had the more simple stands. I mean, I like the weird ones too.
Oh yeah.
But I really like the simple stands that make you bring into the equation some weird physics thing you don't know or something, and just like it's more of a puzzle than anything. It's like an intellectual battle. It
becomes more of a duel between minds rather than like, and then a fisticuffs between punch ghosts or like crazy people. Like one of my favorite scenes was from Stardust Crusaders was that guy who's back when they still had the tarot cards was the guy whose stand was lovers.
I always like Stardust Crusaders because I always liked the like sort of traveling, what would you call it, like road trip kind of style.
Yeah.
So I tried to adapt a lot of that feel into this. So yeah, I think this one it's very Stardust Crusaders in its style. I actually, unintentionally, I noticed recently, having been watching Vento Arreo, it actually has a little bit of that in it too, where it's like the mystery.
Something that I think...
And them traveling, trying to figure it out, so.
Vento Arreo definitely has a different type of mystery over the previous season.
The previous one was like a murder mystery.
Oh my god, it's a different type of mystery, but like, it's nonetheless, it's good.
Yeah, I like all of them because like they're just different.
Yeah,
and
that's something that I think JoJo definitely excels at, and I think that's something that we're going to do here pretty well.
Yeah, trying to mimic that style.
Yeah,
Araki has a really interesting and very unique style.
Yeah, the way that it changed over time.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about his changing style. I liked, it bothered me a little bit in the early seasons. Just
6 foot tall, 17-year-old Japanese high school student.
I'm 17 and he's like a freaking bodybuilder. That bothered me a little bit. And it got better going into, I hate to go back to it all the time, but I really think Stardust Crusaders was just like, that was the one, you know?
Yep.
Like, that was easily my favorite one.
That's what really, what did it for me wasn't Stardust Crusaders. It was Battle Tendency.
I liked Battle Tendency.
You know this scene.
I liked Battle Tendency, but I think the stands added so much to the show.
Stands did add a lot to the show. I wish that they'd bring back a little bit of Haman every now and then, because it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing it mentioned at least. So wait, what scene are you talking about? You're talking about the machine gun thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I like it. If you're looking to show the show to someone who hasn't seen it before, easily the best episode is the second to last episode of Battle Tendency, where Car's hand turns into a squirrel, because it's just so weird out of context.
That's the best context, honestly.
Yeah.
Because they're like, wait, explain this. And you're like, no. Either read the manga or watch the show.
And then they have to.
Yeah,
they just have to watch it at that point. Yeah. So, we've gone a little bit over time. I'll probably have to edit a couple things out, but,
yeah, probably.
So, last word. So this is basically a new season of JoJo, written in a way that it could be canon to the best of my ability, unless there's something I don't know. But I tried to write it in a way that it could fit into the canon as much as possible. It takes place in the modern day.
Modern day as of this starting to be written.
Yeah.
So
I think when we started, it was like 2015.
Yeah.
But point being, the world hasn't changed that much since then.
Yeah.
I mean, not in a way that impacts this story. And so, yeah, so we named a bunch of the stands after songs we liked or knew. They're not all 80s songs like the actual thing. Like,
for instance, Deep Purple is a song that is a group that I grew up with.
Yeah, and mine, which you won't see in this chapter, but later on when you see, would be the character I came up with was known as Evanescence, which is a little on the edgy side, but, you know.
I think it works.
I think it's very appropriate for the stand. It's just that level of JoJo disconnectedness, you know?
Yeah.
Where, like, it's kind of appropriate, but also, like, not super obvious. Some of the one-off villains in here are a little obvious, but, you know. So, yeah, without further ado, we'll just cut to the reading of it then.
Hope you enjoy it. We have our best man on this one. There's nothing to worry about.
The president sighed. John, that's what worries me most. Remember how much we had to pay out in collateral last time? The resulting silence was accompanied by a couple nervous glances across the room. Finally, the secretary sheepishly broke the silence.
We told him to be more careful this time.
The president removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose as he took a deep breath. You know how these stand users are in the thrill of battle. Let's just hope his amusement doesn't come with a large price tag. A flurried panic in a Chinese mall was punctuated by the crash of something akin to an exploding bomb and shattering glass. A man was thrown through a window and into a pillar, leaving a sizable dent where he came to rest. He grunted as he stood, brushing himself off and returning to the fray. He made his way back towards the Victoria's Secret where he'd been thrown from. Stepping over mannequins girded in skimpy lace undergarments, a desk ripped from the ground was flung out the recently made opening, blasted away from the man's face by an invisible force. Undeterred, John stepped through the improvised doorway, bits of glass cracking beneath his feet.
Okay, let's try this again,
he said in a low growl, cracking his knuckles. His target, the man terrorizing the store's more feminine patrons, stopped gawking at them to turn back to John, surprised that he'd survived his trip through the glass, and without more than a few small scratches. How are you still alive? The pervert asked, his voice loud and grating. John's answer was nonverbal. A shadow behind him revealed itself, and showed as the form of a man with sharp purple shards raised across its body, like a sort of built-in armor. So, you have one of these too, said the assailant, a translucent blue form appearing from behind his back. I understand now. You're like me.
Just because we both have stands doesn't make me anything like you,
replied John. The attacker gave a wicked grin and rushed at him. The wall of the store cracked and burst open again, but this time, the body flying through it was the frail form of the pervert. He rolled and bounced across the floor before even realizing what had happened. He caught himself and got to his knees, looking the agent in the eyes with a newfound fear as John stepped through the opening, dust settling around him. In that moment, the pervert's strategy changed, and he fled. Getting to his feet, he bolted away from the direction of the store, heading instead towards the center of the mall. When John saw this intent to run, he took off in pursuit of the fragile, injured man. Despite his wounds, he was surprisingly quick and agile, hopping over benches and indoor planters as he made for the escalators, his pursuer hot on his tail. Seeing the way down, he vaulted over the railing and landed on the stairs, halfway down to the ground floor. John almost had a grasp of him, but stopped as he reached the ledge, looking down to see where he'd landed, before dashing towards the proper entrance of the stairs, as the runner quickly ran down them. feeling he'd put reasonable distance between himself and John. He turned back, only to see John closing the distance rapidly by sliding down the flat metal section between two staircases. The pervert picked up the pace, reaching the bottom steps. Just before hitting the ground floor, John hopped off and nearly tackled the runner, now right on his heels once again. As the two were both beginning to get winded from the chase, they reached the main center of the mall, and the lithe man who'd been trying to escape dove into the fountain. John stopped, standing just a few feet away from its edge, and watching to see what would happen. There was a pause of silence and confusion. The rest of the shoppers unsure what was happening or who these two were. Then the water in the fountain began to swirl. First it started as a small whirlpool, and then ropes of fluid began dancing in the air, circling the drenched man in his now wet trench coat as he stood up in the fountain's center. He started to laugh quietly, and then it grew louder as his insanity became more apparent to any and all onlookers. "You fool! You absolute fool!" he began. "You may have had the upper hand before, but now that I've reached my element, you don't stand a chance in the slightest. My stand, that's what you called it, right? My stand, CCR, gets its power from liquid and controls any water it touches. You've given me a veritable arsenal, and with this, I'm 10 times stronger. You truly have no way of beating me." He began another maniacal laugh, but was cut short as John's fist collided with the man's face, contorting it and breaking his jaw as he was sent flying out of the fountain into the cold ground. The water that had been swirling collapsed, with a splash back to where it had come from, as the man flopped limply to the floor like a dead fish. He tried fruitlessly to return to his feet, dazed and stumbling, but John approached and stood over his defeated foe, pulling him up by his shirt collar.
"You know, there's more than one way to get a girl wet. You're doing it all wrong,"
he said, punching the humiliated opponent unconscious. His stand reappeared and touched the man lightly, making him suddenly weaker and heavier, so that even if he woke up, he wouldn't be fighting back anytime soon. The Speedwagon Foundation sent a team in to capture the limp man and bring him in before he did any more harm. A few hours later, John's flight was ready to take off. The small private jet was sitting in the Chengdu Shangliu International Airport. Miss Velvet stepped out of the lowering door.
"You'd better hurry up. We've already got our next destination." "Already? I thought we were heading back to headquarters,"
said John.
"Yeah, well, something urgent came up."
Thanks for watching this episode of Dungeons & Dragons. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe for more. Feel free to comment your own D&D stories down below. And come follow my Twitter, @DungeonsAndDraw, where I give updates, interact with fans, and even let you vote on what story I tell next.